Okay, hi Daniel Koffler. Thank you so much for joining me and making time to speak with me. You are the founder of New Frontiers, which is an organization that works with children, adolescents, and adults, neurodivergent individuals to help them cope and manage, I guess, in life.
Yeah, yeah. It's with an eye towards self-advocacy and
Mm.
independence. So helping to manage those transitions that life provides, which not everybody has the tools to make those transitions successfully at the time those transitions present themselves. So
Or
we are
neither.
here to kind of help fill in those gaps, and but not just on a tactical basis, on a broader,
Mm.
more kind of like with the full lifespan in mind perspective. So
Okay.
not just addressing the issue at hand, but how do you take those techniques and skills and apply them to life as it comes?
Yes, exactly. And I think I was speaking to John Elder Robeson a few days ago, actually, and he was telling me he's an autistic author, and he was telling me that he wished that there was a mentor or a coach or somebody that understood him at a younger age, because he feels that he's getting so much from coaching now, but he feels that it would have been so much better if he was when he was younger.
I smile because I hear that so many times a
Mm,
day. I mean, literally.
mm,
I talk to professionals, they say, "Oh, I wish I knew about you a couple years ago. I had this person," and it's just, and which is why I try to communicate what we do so frequently. It's
mm,
not necessarily somebody has to kind of work with us or our brand of coaching, but just being aware that coaching is not a four-letter word. It is not something that you have to have failed to first access. You
mm.
know, think the most successful people in the world all
Exactly.
have coaches, business
Yes.
coaches, athletic coaches, trainers, whatever it is.
Mm,
They don't have them because they're unsure of how to do what they do. They need that because they want to go from good to great. And that it's really unlocking that,
mm,
and the accountability part. In a lot of cases, doing this stuff on one's own can it can be very
mm,
convenient to say, you know what, like I have my own
mm,
system in place. I'm going to go do it this way, knowing
mm,
full well that that way has led them to not accomplishing their goals. The
mm.
accountability part is, I think, a big piece of it that people don't recognize until they experience it.
Yeah, I really like that. When I was reading it on your website, the accountability for me is also very important. I work with autistic adults, and we would put long-term and short-term goals in place. And if I don't follow up and check if it is done, then many times it's that kind of attitude of, well, maybe next week. And if we don't put in some ways for an individual to be accountable for their own actions, then it kind of slips through the cracks, I feel like.
Sometimes it takes a bit of time. Like there's all kinds of reasons,
Mm,
how somebody was raised, how they're exposed to information, how they absorb information, that it could just be outside of their skill set at the moment to
mm,
have that level of accountability and self-advocacy.
yes.
We view the general theme, in my opinion, around society, which is that you hit a certain age or a certain milestone, and the expectation is go figure it out. That's
Mm,
how a lot of us do you know thumper through life, and it does, for better or worse, it does work in some cases. But there's enough people out there who that is just not a full credit answer for, and they have the potential, they have the skills, they
mm,
have the ability, they just don't have the path to walk on.
mm,
It's the how do I do this? People are really uncomfortable asking that question because I think that it exposes them for not knowing, when society expects us to know. All the presentation we see out there, particularly these days with social media,
mm.
is that everything is just not only easy
Sunny.
but the best version of itself.
Yes.
And it's obviously not true.
Mm,
And you know nobody should feel shame for having to ask a question, even if you have to ask it four times, even if all your peers seem to be managing it easily. That's them. That's their situation.
mm,
That's whatever that is. Your circumstances are this. And on the good side, if you do ac- accept the support, your foundations can be so much stronger than the peers who you look to and think, wow, they've got it all together, because you're doing this the right way, the hard way, at a
exactly.
stage in life where you really understand like the value of doing it this way.
You're not masking it and you're not faking it. I feel like one of the things that you said on Healthy Frontiers is that 85% of the people need mentoring. And I think it's actually, maybe that's underestimating it, because
Probably.
I feel like we all needed mentoring. We just didn't know where to reach out for or who to speak with. And exactly what you said, it's not about that they can't do it. It's about having that self-esteem and confidence to say, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. Instead of, I can't do it, there are a lot of people. And and I feel like, just from my experience working with autistic adults and adolescents and kids, that needs to be put in place at a very young age. Like the focus on being self-aware, being self-regulated, or regulating yourself more so, to become more in control of your own emotions, to be able to guide yourself through these situations. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, the concept of early intervention, is universal, in my opinion, right?
Mm,
Whatever the issue is, the earlier you address it, the better chance you have of becoming a foundational skill, right?
yeah.
And so yeah, I completely agree. That this kind of stuff, from just, we find a lot of value in just having conversations, just making
Mm,
people aware of the language, aware of the fact that expectations shift from one stage of life to the next. We
mm,
don't always do a good job as a society to specifically explain what those expectations are going to be. Just know they're going to be different, and the consequences of not understanding them are going to be higher. So that's like a really,
mm.
you know, you know,
Abstract.
yeah, right, and like it's a very slippery slope for somebody
Mm,
who is thriving on clarity, which
mm,
I think individuals in the autism community, would benefit from clarity for sure.
exactly.
Abstractism is not the best approach in my experience, and but that's also a universal concept. You
Mm,
know, I ask questions, and when I communicate with even my peers, my friends, I ask it in a way that it can be very grating on them,
mm.
because I'm asking for, like, so okay, we're going to dinner, like, when are we going? Where are we going?
What
Then
should
I'm
I
doing the math.
wear? Yeah.
How are we going to get there, etc.
Yeah.
Like, I know that might seem like an insignificant detail to you, but like, I'm basing the rest my whole day today and tomorrow around that piece of information. It
Mm,
all matters if I want to be efficient with my time, the way that
mm,
I spend my time, or just successful in general with
yeah.
managing my tasks.
It makes sense, because when I had an early intervention center in South Africa, and one of my teachers is autistic. She was working there, and she mentioned to me, I need things to be compartmentalized. So if you start making jokes in the boardroom, I drift off. So can we keep the jokes for after the meeting? And that was actually, it was such a good um, conducive and positive criticism for me as a managerial, in a managerial position, because I now became a better manager, because I was like, okay, that actually makes sense, because we speak about work and then we can relax more. So it's from both sides, I feel like, as well.
But it's an excellent example of self-advocacy on the
Mm,
part of the employee, right?
yes.
If everybody did that, regardless of diagnosis, just like
Yeah.
every human did that, we would be so much better off. But people
Mm,
are afraid of conflict, like,
yeah.
and it can come off that way sometimes, or they don't want
Mm,
to tell their manager how to manage them. But listen, if you're
mm,
a manager, a leader, it's your responsibility to clear the path for your team to do the work that you're having them do. So if
yeah.
that's the whole work, then that's what it means,
Mm.
in my opinion.
So if you look at a younger child, what advice would you give to a parent that could help on these self-advocacy skills for their younger child? Like,
Two things come to mind in
mm,
particular. One, don't beat yourself up if you're not able to solve this issue, right? It's
mm,
not that's something. It's not. No one's broken, right? So let's start there. You're not going to fix. It's not like a fixing thing. It's more of a. It's a different approach. People's minds work differently.
mm,
Having children does not imbue you with the skills to manage a child or each individual child in your household's particular, nature versus nurture, you know, journey.
mm,
So seek professional help. Like, nobody thinks twice about calling a doctor or a lawyer when they have an issue that is germane to those professions. There are people out there who do this work professionally, and they're very good at it. So seek help, and there's a lot of help out there to seek. Right. The other thing is to be aware that just because you learned a certain way, or you had a certain experience growing up, does not mean that your children, they're not growing up in the same world, first of all.
Mm.
And even if they were, they're different people. And that's the beauty of the human race. Like, we all have our own, you know, pieces that make us us.
Mm.
Recognize that, and don't try to just, if what worked for you, then that worked for you.
Mm.
It's not the same thing for each person. So just be mindful of that and understand that, they're going to be your children no matter what. Like, they may have different aspirations or different abilities, and that's just what it is. You have to, what they really need more than anything is your just, unyielding support and
Mm.
kind of and appreciation and respect that they're going to do the best they can for them. And it's their journey, but it's their journey to take.
Mm.
Recognize that you cannot take this journey for them. You can
Yeah.
try to help them along at an earlier stage, but that band-aid does come off,
Yeah.
whether you want to or not, and it's going to be the easy way or the hard way. We all have our moment, moment of truth, I refer to it as, where we kind of, where that you feel that shift. Something happens where, all of a sudden they're 18,
Mm.
right? Or whatever age they are. And it's like, wow, like, they have their own dreams and aspirations, and like, they have to be able to approach those, and they're going to stumble. They're going to
Mm.
fall. Like, that's part of, we all do. It's really uncomfortable to watch that happen, but it's part of the process. And you probably don't think about it that way as a parent from your own experiences versus watching your children. It's elevated by, a factor of infinity when it's your own children.
Mm.
But they will be okay. And if you find the right support for them,
Mm.
you are doing them a great service to ensure they'll be okay, and not, and more than okay.
Yeah, I think the finding support from a younger age is important. Like you said, early intervention, but also finding the specific support for your child. It's not it's not a blanket effect where you can just say, okay, um, uh, 40 hours of this therapy and speech therapy and OT is right for every child. Some kids only need perhaps a mentor or a coach from a young age.
And it's also, and not just, not just the prescription, if you will, but what the services would be appropriate are, but it's also the provider. Like,
Mm.
that matters. And we're very sensitive to that, because we've seen folks come our way, discuss working with us, decide not to for whatever their reasons are, which is totally okay, seek support from somebody else and have a negative experience, and
Mm.
then cast that shadow on the whole industry,
Okay.
right? So now
Yeah.
their view is, this concept is inappropriate for us to consider,
Mm.
and they tell their next 5 friends, don't try that. So, like,
Mm.
there's a responsibility as a provider, in my view, to do the right thing and to kind of, like, be thoughtful that if you're going to be the right fit, because
Mm.
parents and children don't always know. Like, we do this for a living. We
Yeah.
see a wide range, you, I, etc., the professional community. We see a wide range of folks on a daily basis, so we can understand kind of where our abilities can be productive or not. They
Mm.
don't know. This is a really murky environment to navigate for a
Mhm.
parent, and I think there's a responsibility to make sure that we underscore that piece. Like, it's not just the work, but it's who's doing the work can make a big difference as well.
Mm. And I like the way that you guys work. You've got different processes for different phases. So you've got the RISE and the ROSP and the visa process. And you don't have to go into detail about it because there are actually videos on your social media about it. But if you can just give a general overview of what these processes entail.
Well, so they relate to different phases of kind of the coaching experience, right? It's about how we evaluate where somebody stands and where they're trying to get to. The fact that visa and rise, are words, is funny and interesting. Like, we appreciate
Mm.
that.
I
From a
love the
financial perspective,
acronyms. Yes. I
it,
enjoyed that.
one of our key team members is very big on making on the symmetry of these things.
Mhm.
And he spent a lot of time kind of coming to that. The work was being done, but we put like a label on it. We were all so excited about it,
Mm.
and we still are. So it's about breaking down the steps of this process. We want to make sure that people are kind of being engaged properly as they transition through this process with us, so that nothing falls through the cracks. We're able to circle back as needed, and we're able to really ensure that we're doing this in order. There's an order of operation that does matter, And we want to make sure we stick to that. And that's in very simple terms, broad strokes, what
Yeah.
those processes refer to. Some of those
Yes.
are for more general executive functioning supports. Some of them are more related to career supports. But it's the same concept either way.
Mm. And it depends on each child. Obviously, you'll do an assessment and an evaluation and see where they fit in. I'm presuming that a lot of the kids and the adults go into an executive functioning program where that's one of the main focus areas for you.
Yeah, everything we do is rooted in executive functioning kind of
Mm.
coaching, right? So
Okay.
they come to us with all different shapes and sizes of circumstances and goals. Sometimes they're
Mhm.
not able to enunciate the goal. It's a big part of like our initial work is to kind of help understand what are your goals,
Mm.
and then create a roadmap to achieve those. But we're agnostic of diagnosis. That's really not the issue here. It's you can have no formal diagnosis and still have executive functioning challenges,
Yes, of course. Also, like 85% or more of the people.
to say the least. I think so.
I think we all struggle with it at some point. I learned quite a
Oh
lot
yeah.
within my job, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. I suggest something to someone, and then I actually implement it in my own life, which I think is probably the best way to work with clients. We also have an acronym. So our acronym is AIMS: Awareness, Interest, Movement, Sensory. And that was actually Nanette Buerta, my business partner, who thought of the acronym, and I like it as well. But
I do
that
too.
Thank you. So we work a lot on mindfulness and self-regulation, self-awareness to teach our younger children to become self-advocates for whatever they need in whichever situation. Do you feel that there's a little bit of a lack of those kind of concepts at a younger age? And do you also provide that within your system?
I mean, the nature of like our work, what we see, of course, I think that there's a lack of it. If there wasn't, then we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't need to exist.
Mhm.
We we tend to begin working like our real sweet spot is probably like 14 to 26 years of age,
Okay.
when there's a lot of transition going on. That said,
Mhm.
we have folks who are in their late 70s and we have folks who are in, seven.
Mm.
So, it spans the lifespan, as I mentioned earlier. But what we really tend to think about is, think about like elementary school in
Mm.
America, at least, like that's the term. You know, around third grade, you transition from learning how to read to reading to learn, right? And then
Mm.
around sixth grade, you transition from like you're in one room the whole day with the teacher going through subjects to like specialized subject matter
Mm.
experts who are going through science and math and social studies, etc. Those transitions um, can be daunting for
Mm.
folks. It can be it seems like, well, that's what we all had to do, right?
Yeah,
And we didn't have these labels as recently as when I
exactly.
was in school, right? Like
Yeah.
it was just looked at differently. We've gotten smarter and we've
Mm.
made adjustments to how we think about this kind of stuff. Thank goodness. So yeah, I absolutely think early intervention, is critical and lacking. There can always be more. There can
Mhm.
always be more.
And you've got a whole history of being in this field with your parents both establishing schools, and your mom was a speech therapist, I
That's
heard.
right. Well, I guess she technically is still. She doesn't practice.
Okay.
Um, but yes, that's we got our start working with my mother and father built a school 3+ decades ago for individuals with a range of developmental disabilities, 3 to 5 years old.
Mm.
We still operate the school as a family all these years
That's
later.
amazing.
And we learned a lot about both early childhood
Mhm.
populations and special education populations and what interventions can be successful and where there's a lack in the market. And
Mhm.
that kind of long story short turned into New Frontiers, where there's so much support in the K-12 arena, and it's not enough,
And
but
then it
rightly
stops.
so,
Yes.
right? It falls off a cliff.
Mm.
And one could argue like everything you've learned up to that point is just to prepare you for the next stage. I mean,
Exactly.
understanding lifelong learning, like that is what
Mm.
it's about. Like every stage prepares you for the next stage.
Yeah.
So, but if you don't have a firm foundation, the outcome is predictable and it's not positive, and
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be. And we strongly subscribe to that theme that it doesn't have to be. And as far as we're concerned, we're not going to allow it to be, to the extent that folks want support.
Yeah. It's so needed. Do you do virtual assessment and counseling as well?
Yeah, so we're almost exclusively virtual at this point. when we started off, we did everything in person, and we still do some work in person. But even before COVID, we had been experimenting with in person with virtual supports. When COVID hit, the entire world was forced to figure out a way to make things work through a virtual dynamic, and
Yeah.
that has allowed us. We were ready for it. I think that sometimes the broader society wasn't ready to accept this kind of stuff virtually. We had our own reservations as well, to be sure. We were very quality control focused, so we
Mm.
were concerned that we couldn't do as good a job. We have demonstrated to ourselves and to dozens of clients, hundreds of clients at this point, that we very much can do this productively virtually. And frankly, it opens up a huge opportunity for folks who live in parts of the world where these services
With their
aren't
own
provided in
services.
person.
Yeah.
And it's not like well, I'll take the next best option of virtual. Virtual is
Mm.
how we operate these days. So
It's also, sorry to interrupt you, but it's
no,
also
please.
we've found that it's better for our population most of the time. We're doing online therapy with our kids, and as young as 3 years old, and they are loving it. So we've actually done a few videos of the testimonials that we're getting from parents, whereas they're just sending videos in on how good their kids are doing. And these are 3-year-olds that are sitting and doing therapy online. And then the one of my clients is, he's in his 30s, and he's also preferring this because they can't smell what's going on in the room. They can't see all the distractions and the lights and everything. So it's actually, they can look wherever they want to look. They don't have to go and speak to the admin lady and walk into the office and do all these nuances that they don't really enjoy. So it's actually, we've found that it's quite a positive change. So I'm not that against the whole restrictions in place.
Oh, listen, I mean, look, I cannot wait for COVID to be, out of our lives as a
Mm,
society. But at the same time, it has forced us to look at certain things differently. And a lot
mm,
of those things are going to have a very positive consequence for how we
yes.
function on a day-to-day basis. And I think this is one of them. From a
Mhm.
mental health, coaching, that arena perspective, this creates accessibility for almost anybody, which I
Yes.
think is a really important thing.
Mm. And just the last thing, what you said earlier is so important because we all need coaches. I mean, whether it is a therapist or a coach, somebody that's helping you just with your social media marketing, whatever it is, we all need a bit of guidance. So I'm really excited that we connected, and I hope that we can still work together for a while.
Oh,
Thank you
most
so much.
definitely. We're not going anywhere,
Okay,
so
great.
we really appreciate the opportunity to connect here and to collaborate going forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Daniel.